We are back with another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. So happy that you're tuning in again to listen to our beautiful voices. And today I'm here with my friend and fellow holistic health coach and breathwork facilitator, Leanne Glasser. So, Leanne and I actually run a monthly awakened living community for sober curious souls because we have a lot in common. We're both alcohol free. We retired binge drinkers and holistic health coaches. And yeah, I'm so excited that you're here today so we can dive into all things sober curiosity, holistic health, breath work, all the things. So, hello, Leanne.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know. I'm so excited for you to be here. So, how are you doing, by the way, before
I'm
I just
doing
dive
good.
in? Million
Yeah,
questions.
doing good, doing great. Excited to just chat today and yeah, it's 4/4, so it's a good day.
Four. I know,
Yeah,
right? It will be like who knows what when this comes out.
yeah,
July.
but we're in it now, 4/4,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I know. And you're in Charleston.
I am.
So, yeah, we've never met in real life, Leanne and I.
Yes, which is
Kind
so
of funny.
interesting because I feel like we know each other so well, and yeah, we've never met in real life, only online.
I know. Oh, we met in a business group, right? And we weren't
Yeah,
even in the business group at the same time. We overlapped
yeah,
in like the support group. And I
yes.
remember the first one I went to with you, you were so quiet and I was like, I really like her.
Even though I didn't talk, you're
Uh,
like, I don't know, I get a good vibe.
yeah, like good vibes. She didn't say a word, but for some reason I think I want to be her friend.
I was still drinking at that point. So,
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I was still drinking at that point. Which and I think we'll probably get into that a little bit, but I was quieter in sober situations while I was still drinking. So, probably why I
Yeah.
didn't talk much.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like you always seem really poised too. You have more of like an observational energy. Like you're taking it all in.
Yes, I do like to take it all in and observe. So,
Not
yeah.
me. That's like blurt it all out. Get it all out there right away. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, that's how Leanne and I met, and we definitely kind of bonded from there, just working on our businesses together. And then since then, you've integrated breathwork into the awakened living community and such a cool tool for supporting sober curious people, which we'll dive into. But before we do, I always just start by opening things up and allowing you space to share about your kind of personal path that led you to where you are today. I think that's such an interesting thing for people to hear about, is just our own storytelling. And so, tell me about what brought you to breathwork, but also just working as a holistic health coach in general.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's. That was probably about 6 years ago at this point. And I was basically told I went to see an endocrinologist. I got diagnosed. I was in the office for maybe all of 5 minutes. And I was essentially told that I would, my Hashimoto's, if you don't know about it, it affects your thyroid. So I was told that I was just kind of on the borderline of hypothyroidism, and that basically we would just wait until my thyroid levels were worse and put me on daily medication. So basically, wait to get sicker, go on this daily medication, which is synthetic hormones that you're putting into your body. And it comes with all sorts of side effects. And I was already having a lot of symptoms. So I didn't like that answer. I did ask, like, is what can I do holistically to, is there anything I can do with my nutrition or exercise or anything like that? And my doctor did say that nothing was proven. So I just knew I was driving home after the doctor, and I just knew in my gut, and my intuition was just telling me that that was not the case. And at least that was not the case for me. And that I was determined to, I didn't even know if remission was possible, but I was determined to beat it and to go into remission and to not have to, go on these medications for the rest of my life and possibly have to have my thyroid removed at some point, and just deal with this for the rest of my life. I knew for me that was not it. So I immediately that day went home. I started ordering books. I started researching. I started just listening to other people's stories who had gone into remission from it, and even just people who maybe they weren't in remission, but they healed their symptoms and just felt a lot better. So I definitely there was a lot out there, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. So first thing I did, I immediately changed my nutrition. If I could do it all over again, I would have started started elsewhere, but that's what I did, and it really really helped. Within a few months, I was feeling a lot better, and my antibodies were going down. That's the marker of the autoimmune disease.
Mm-hmm.
So my blood work was looking better. And then I had a period of chronic stress at work, like a really stressful period at my old job. I was running a vacation rental company, and I was basically working 7 days a week. It was not like a 9 to 5. Like I didn't have hours. Like I was running the whole company. So I was dealing with the housekeepers, the contractors, the guests, like everybody. I didn't really have anybody working for me aside from the housekeepers. So I was doing like a bunch of people's jobs basically. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized my antibodies skyrocketed and all my symptoms came back, even though I was eating really clean and eating what my body needed. I did a lot of work around what specifically my body wanted and, wanted to take in for nourishment and what it didn't want. So even though I was still doing that, I realized that stress was really affecting my health as well. So I decided to commit to some type of stress management practice. So I just started small, like in the morning, instead of immediately checking my emails and texts, which usually, if somebody's messaging me in the middle of the night, it's not anything great to wake up to because it's usually about a problem. So I was immediately stressing myself out in the morning and like putting myself in this chaotic fight or flight state. So, yeah, I was like, okay, I'm going to just, when I first wake up, I'm not going to look at my phone and I'm going to just meditate for 5 to 10 minutes. So I tried that. And, I had dabbled with meditation before, but it just felt almost like it was making me feel more stressed sometimes. Like it was like I couldn't like wait to just stand up and start my day, and like I couldn't felt like, all these thoughts are racing through my head. And I know I hear this from a lot of people too. It just almost feels like it's hard to meditate, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's not really the point of it. The point of it is to calm your nervous system, but if you're feeling more anxious when you're doing it, it's kind of defeating the purpose, right? So I happened to stumble across, I was doing like a guided meditation where you focused on your breath more and you
Mm-hmm.
actually just counted your breath. And there wasn't any kind of like visualization or anything like that going on. You were simply just doing a breathing technique and focusing on your breath. And I found that that really helped and was a lot easier for me. And it really calmed my nervous system. So that's kind of how I got into breath work. I kind of switched away from just trying to just straight up sit down and meditate to
Mm-hmm.
at least focusing on my breath for a few minutes before I go into a meditation, or just doing breath work for 10-15 minutes. And that really, really helped.
Yeah. I know. I think it is so nice with what you said. For a lot of people, just trying to sit there and observe their thoughts without any structure to it can feel really daunting, uncomfortable, difficult, anxiety inducing, especially in our culture. We are not really encouraged to just sit and observe our thoughts often. It's the opposite where we're distracted all the time. And so breathwork kind of gives you that segue, I feel like, while also helping you accomplish the same thing. And the breathwork that we did together, the transformational breathwork journey I did with you, was so amazing with the activation of the kind of parasympathetic nervous system, which actually settled me into like a more meditative state after. So that's really cool too. I never realized how many different techniques there were for breathing. Um,
Yeah.
so talking with you and learning a little bit more. So can you, I guess before we dive in there, there was a couple things that you said that stood out that I wanted to circle back to.
Sure.
One was you said that you kind of started with nutrition with your Hashimoto's. And so I really wanted to hear like what changes did you make to your nutrition? And then you also said that you wish you had started somewhere else. So
Yeah.
tell me more about like what changes really helped you in terms of your autoimmune issues specifically, and then where do you wish you started instead?
Yeah, so I basically started with an elimination diet. I did not go full blown autoimmune paleo, if you've heard of
Mm,
your autoimmune protocol,
yeah.
AIP
Yeah.
diet. I did not fully go into that, but I did read about it and how people were having success with it. So I kind of customized it to myself, and I just like started smaller instead of cutting all of the things out at once. I just started with the things where for me made the most sense that were probably going to be things that I should, give up. Like there are some things that are kind of like controversial that are you're like, do I really need to give that up? Like certain
Or like
fruits and
especially all,
vegetables.
yeah.
Yeah. So I started with the things and I'm like, okay, what should I really like what should I test out first? So I gave up gluten, dairy, soy, and alcohol. And those were my first things that I gave up. I gave them up for a full 90 days and
Mhm.
then slowly tried to reintroduce things and pretty quickly realized that those things were not agreeing with me. And actually soy happened like a couple weeks in. I Somebody accidentally put soy sauce when I went out to a restaurant and I had only a couple bites and it actually made me really sick, which happens when you cut things out and then haven't had it for so long and then have it.
Mhm.
I realized that those things were definitely inflammatory for me. So I have stuck with that and I don't really eat those things anymore. Um, and that's how I started. And then I did play around with some other things here and there that I kept a food journal for a little while. And so I just started putting the pieces together and noticing that certain things, like at one point, brown rice was bothering me. There were certain things here and there that I realized I was sensitive to. And several of those things I've added back in and I've been fine. So I was able to heal my gut enough, I think, to be able to handle those things. So I do have them in moderation. Um,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, just for anyone who's listening, the elimination diet is something that's used for autoimmune issues or a lot of times allergies, where you eliminate a bunch of food groups. And honestly, I wouldn't even encourage people to do it unless they have some kind of health issue because it is pretty restrictive. And so, it's for sure best used therapeutically. But what happens is you can then reintroduce foods, see if you're reactive to them. And then it kind of gives you a hint as to like which foods agree with your body and or don't. And
yeah,
then also you can learn like a lot of times if you remove certain irritating foods like you said you can heal your gut and then potentially enjoy them again once your gut's healed, but sometimes you like remove them for a while to do so. So yeah, it's really hard. I've done it before just with my background in functional medicine just to kind of see how I felt and experiment with something that I could potentially recommend to people just to know.
yeah.
It was hard.
It is hard. Yeah. That's why I always recommend if people, want to do that, if they are having health issues, to just maybe just start with one or two things
Yeah.
because doing the whole full blown thing, I mean, I can't even imagine if I would have given up all the other things too. And then when you're trying to add stuff back in, it gets really confusing too because they say like eat the same thing for 3 days, like three times a day for 3 days and see if you have a reaction. But some things I wasn't reacting to till like almost a week later. So it was kind of out
Yeah.
of that time period. So it can get really tricky if you're doing multiple
Overlap.
things too and there's overlap. Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging, and definitely I would say not for people who have like a history of disordered eating, or if you're
Right.
just trying to like lose weight or get healthier, I wouldn't encourage it. It's like really for therapeutic reasons, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think or I guess if you're a glutton for punishment like me, and I did
Yeah.
feel like I was responsible though for if I was gonna tell people I needed to try it out. So,
Yeah.
okay. And then you also said that you wish you had started somewhere else. Like, I know a lot of times we focus on all of these physical contributors to health right away, like diet, exercise. And so tell me more about where you would, in hindsight, have began your kind of autoimmune healing path.
Yeah, I mean, the way my journey went, I know it went that way for a reason, so I could,
Mhm.
guide others to maybe do it in a simpler way. Um, but I definitely would have started now knowing what I know. I would have started by just simply learning to regulate my nervous system. So, aside from just like the daily stress management practices that I started, just learning how to regulate my nervous system throughout the day, just like with breath work. I mean, that's really what I started with breath work before I even got into transformational breath work. That's what I started using it for. I had tried, I mean, at one point I had, you know, I was carrying around Xanax with me because I was having panic attacks at work. I had tried CBD. I had tried vaping CBD. Like I had tried a lot of stuff and nothing seemed to work. But I eventually realized that when I was doing the vaping of the CBD, it immediately gave me a cough after like a week. So I immediately stopped doing it. But I realized that something was helping. And I realized what it was just when I started to feel that panicky feeling, I would just go to my car and instead of doing the vaping, I would sit there and just take a few deep breaths. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
that is actually helpful. And it actually would, stop the panic attack from happening if I just
Mhm.
sat there and just focused on my breath and just took a break.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have started with first because it's just if you don't feel safe in your body, that's like one basic thing we need, right? As a human need, we need to feel safety. And if we don't feel that safety, all of these other changes we're making are not going to be as effective or sometimes aren't going to work.
Yeah.
I talk to people all the time. They're like, I don't know, like I'm eating so healthy and I'm exercising and doing all these things and I just don't see any changes. But I can often see just from talking to them that they're like in fight or flight mode. They're checking their phone. They can't even, like carry on a conversation sometimes. And so that is when our bodies in stuck in that mode, it's very hard for any of these other things to really be effective at all. So yeah, I would have definitely started there.
Yeah, totally. One thing I see a lot of is that same thing where people are stuck in chronic fight or flight, and they're just like jumping from fix to fix to fix and being like, why isn't anything working? Why isn't anything working? I'm like, calm down. We have to calm down first of all, because
Hmm.
it's like even with calming your nervous system, I found for me it wasn't like one thing, because I do use CBD and I feel like it helps. But like if I was only using CBD, I don't think that it's so subtle, right? Like I don't think I would be like, "Oh, my nervous system is calm," or it's like a mixture of tools and taking out toxic things from your life. Like eliminating alcohol was huge, I know for both of us, but um like learning to create a more peaceful living environment, kind of opting out of lots of the stressors that are normalized, lots of toxic behaviors that are normalized, like ridding unhealthy relationships from your life, learning how to integrate regular stress management. So I feel like people say like calming your nervous system a lot as kind of like a catchphrase, but it's not really like one thing. There's like so many things that we can do to like cultivate a calmer space for ourselves on a daily basis that we then can feel safe, and our body is going to like optimally embrace these physical changes we're making. Whereas like when we're in chronic fight or flight, our nervous system is highly activated. It's just like we're not in a space to receive healing, really. It's called rest and digest, and
Exactly.
like rest and repair, and that's down regulated when we're in fight or flight. So I love what you said about, focusing there first so that you're in a state where you're able to heal and able to um, get the most out of the changes you're making. And also just mentally not like chasing your tail and
Hmm.
trying like one thing and it's not working. And I see clients do that a lot with like goal setting and stuff where it's like, it's almost just like constantly distracted and looking for the next external fix. Like you have to just get comfortable with yourself for a minute first before anything will feel like successful, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, like you said, it's a lot of different things that go into it. It's not just one thing. And yeah, the things you're eating are affecting your nervous system too. So it all plays
Mhm.
in together. But like,
Right.
if you're like, one thing I noticed was like, I was eating so fast. Like, I would eat my meals so fast and I would be like on my phone working while I was eating and I wasn't even paying attention to chewing. And then I'm in a state of fight or flight, which obviously your other nervous system state is literally called rest and digest. So
Yeah.
I was in fight or flight. You're not digesting food if you're in fight or flight. So even just that, even just learning to put yourself into a parasympathetic state, into that rest and digest mode, even around just meal times, can be so huge.
Yeah.
Versus like, we're always like, oh my God, what's the food that's bothering me? What's the thing that's making me not be able to digest my food? And sometimes it's literally just that. It's like because you're in that fight or flight mode. And
Yeah.
we have those two modes and we need both of them, but we have to find that balance of being just kind of right between the two and being able to regulate between the two. Because we need
And
the sympathetic for energy, but
right, right. And like coming out of it when we don't need it. Because I think
right.
that's the issue is the psychological stressors that are just present all the time now. And so we're just so used to being in that state, which, like you said too, even plays into the way that we're eating. If we're stressed out when we're eating, it's received by our body in a totally different way, absorbed by our
Hmm.
body in a totally different way. And so that's where a lot of those principles of mindful eating come in and like no good versus bad food because a lot of it has to do with how you're eating things. And I think there's a balance of the two there too, like focusing on nourishing choices, but also like the relationship you have to food matters as well. And the relationship you have to eating, if you're just scarfing your food down, not chewing it, all of
Yeah.
the factors. And so that's what I think can be really daunting about holistic health sometimes is that there's not like one solution handed to you. There's so much accountability on your end to like explore yourself in many different facets. And so that can be a lot for people, especially when the alternative is, well, we'll just wait for it to get worse. Here's a pill and we'll just remove that organ.
Right. We'll just
The
literally
literal
remove
exact,
a vital piece of your body. Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
like don't worry about changing anything. Like that hasn't been proven. We'll just cut it out and give you a pill for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I
Actually, just
knew when she was like, "Well, you seem pretty healthy, so just don't stress about it. Just live your life." And I was like, I seem pretty healthy. Like, you just diagnosed me with an autoimmune illness. Just because you look at me and you see that I seem like I'm in shape. Like, I was insulin resistant. Yes, I wasn't like super overweight, but like I was insulin resistant. I was clearly inflamed. I had acne. Like, I had eczema. Like, there were things going on. Like,
yeah.
so you can't just look at somebody and just assume that they're healthy because of the way they look
Yeah.
or,
Well, and also, like, you don't know what's going on psychologically. You mentioned panic attacks. I mean, that
yeah.
isn't, that's not healthy to be having like regular anxiety at a level that you're having panic attacks. And they probably didn't even ask, like, how are your stress levels? Otherwise, they would have known that you were having panic attacks. And so, that's yeah, kind of the gap between the void and conventional medicine sometimes is the standards of health are not extremely high, and there's not a lot of time to unearth some of those like beneath the surface contributors to health. And I always say like off the plate health too, where it's like it's not just what you're eating, it's how you're living your life, like the thoughts you're thinking, the people you spend time with, how passionate you are about your job, the stress levels, like all sleep, all of these things where it's like you can't tell that by looking at someone, but they're not equipped to manage health in that way, which is
Right.
why I feel like there's definitely room for both for sure. And we talk about I've talked about this with so many people on the podcast, but I do think um that we as a society place like so much emphasis on conventional medicine, and it's like, yeah, but it's not the whole picture. And
Yeah.
so it's really disempowering for a lot of us though, because when you go and we have placed all this importance on one approach, and then you get that opinion and you're like, shit, really? That's kind of a depressing diagnosis to hear, but we do have more options if we care to look for them and put in the work, because it is definitely a lot of work. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, there are people out there that would rather just take the pill and just deal with it that way, and that's fine for them. But yeah, that was not me. And I just, you have to go with your gut, and there's plenty of amazing doctors out there, but you have to go with your gut. And like when she said things like that to me, like basically we wait for you to get sicker to put you on medication, and then things like, well, you look pretty healthy, you seem pretty healthy, like and being there for all of 5 minutes, like when you put all that together, like in your brain, are you really thinking that this person has your best interests at heart? And like, you have to take that, take what you will with, take everything with a grain of salt. Just because they're a doctor and, they've gone to medical school, you still have to use your intuition and, what makes sense to you.
Yeah, we've given a lot of power and authority to people with a medical degree, which is well earned and hard earned. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of physicians go into medicine with the intention of helping people. I don't think the system allows them to do it to their fullest capacity, though. And I feel like a lot of doctors just have their hands tied in the
Mm-hmm.
amount to which they can help you. Like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like most physicians are like intentionally gaslighting patients or being like, oh, well, here's a pill. It's just like that's the curriculum they were taught, with symptom management and matching a symptom to a pharmaceutical. And then the system itself is like, here's 10 minutes with each person. It's like, what else could you even do? Imagine opening the can of worms of like, how's your stress in a 1 15-minute appointment.
Yeah,
You're
that's
like,
the thing. I
actually,
don't even think I was there for 15 minutes. I really think it was about 5 minutes. I
like,
was like
yeah,
shocked at how quick it was. And I had just been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Like, so you could leave with that and just be like, obviously doom and gloom and like, oh my gosh, like I just got diagnosed with autoimmune disease and that's that. And like, I'm just going to get super sick for the rest of my life and all these things. And, you could leave with that, or you can just leave and just listen to your intuition and be like, okay, what makes sense? Because you're right. They're, how many people are they seeing in a day? Like at that point, you're just a number really. Like they
right.
don't they don't remember you and everything that's going on with your body, you
Yeah, and
know?
you know yourself best, even if
Right.
somebody with more education is like telling you based on numbers and statistics, like what your diagnosis is, you know yourself best. I felt that way when I did the glucose tolerance test. I talked to you about it, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
For my pregnancy, I felt that way when they were just like, well, this is the number, and you have gestational diabetes. So, meanwhile, it's like a screening test. And I was like, I feel like that doesn't feel right. And I know there's so many factors that go into gestational diabetes, but like, sure enough, I went and she told me, like, you definitely have it based on this number and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. No one in my family has had it. The only thing that I could think of was placental hormones, because my like the other factors weren't at play. And then I just tested my blood sugar for 2 weeks and it was completely fine. So it's like, obviously that test was, something skewed that particular test for me. And
Mhm.
a midwife later said, oh, maybe because you eat really healthy, your body was confused about what to do with that sugar load. But in the meantime,
Absolutely.
I definitely felt, before like doing my blood sugar testing, and my initial intuition was like, yeah, like that doesn't seem right. Like something feels off about this. But then it did start messing with me, and I was starting to get like anxious by being given a diagnosis and just labeled like, you have this, without much further explanation and just kind of based off one test without talking to me about like my family background, my diet, my exercise, like nothing. Just being like, oh, well, this is what you have. And like, this is you're going to have to do this, or not really explaining options to me or anything. So I can see how, and that's coming from me, who I'd like to think I am like advocate for myself a little bit more and have a little bit more of like a background than maybe the average person does, and
Right.
going into a medical situation is kind of intimidating and scary. And like and hospitals aren't that comforting in any way. And then on top of it, if you're given some diagnosis you know nothing about and just told that this is what you have and this is what you have to do. Most people aren't going to go do like a shit ton of outside research. Like some people will, but not everyone.
Yeah, not everyone is going to do the work. Not everyone's willing to do it. Not everyone's willing to overhaul their life like I did to go
Yeah.
into remission. But yeah, I mean, I was determined. And, you know, everybody on both sides of my family has health issues. So, on my dad's side, like people did not live to be much older than in their 50s. Like that's kind of an average age to pass away is like their 50s. So, cancer, heart disease. I'm sure there was quite a bit of autoimmune that people just weren't diagnosed with yet because it's, something that's starting to be diagnosed more often. But, you know, there's a lot of things with the conventional testing that just doesn't pick it up. So it can be hard to diagnose. But yeah, a lot of heart disease, a lot of cancer. So I'm very high risk for all that stuff. And, I knew that. And I knew like I could either, I don't know, just try to live my life. And like people say, like, oh my gosh, like you're so careful about stuff all the time. Like, don't you ever just have fun? Like, like, yeah, I do have fun. I freaking love my life and I feel incredible. Like, and it's,
Mhm.
I still enjoy food. Like I still do all those things. Like, but yeah, you do have to do the hard shit to have a transformation. Like a transformation doesn't just come because you're just like, oh, transform me. Somebody transform me and heal me. I don't know. Like, nobody else is going to heal you. You have to heal yourself. No
Right,
doctor, no healer, nobody else. You can heal yourself. And that's that.
right. Even medications, all that stuff, that's not healing you. It's just removing symptoms and allowing you to be symptom free, where sometimes other ones can arise. And so then that's where you have to weigh like what's important to you. Is it important for me to have immediate gratification and just kind of rid myself of these symptoms, perhaps being reliant on this for life and the potential for other symptoms because I'm not really resolving the problem? Or do
Right.
I want to do this hard ass work that involves like looking in every crevice of my life, but hopefully the end goal is that um like I can be the healthiest version of myself possible, but I see why people go either way. There's
Yeah. I mean,
sometimes it does
sometimes you're
feel like
not going to have a choice. Sometimes you are going to have to take medication.
Mhm.
Like with the autoimmune disease that I had, like if I was a little bit over that little marker, they would have put me on thyroid medication and told me like I had to be on that. And, and you do, if you're over a certain point, like you have to manage those hormones first and foremost. Um, so
Right.
yeah, it's hard, but,
And then you have
um,
that additional factor like playing a role that's like a foreign
mhm.
substance,
Yeah, and a
like
lot of the side
has
effects
to
actually
do with that.
mimic the autoimmune symptoms. So even if your autoimmune symptoms are kind of going away, the side effects for the medicine feel the same. So it's like,
Yeah. You're
yeah,
like, wait, so should I not? Yeah, it's funny. What is that one where I think it was for I forget what medication it is. Is smallpox? Wait, no, not smallpox. What is the adult chicken pox? Shingles.
shingles. Yeah.
Yeah, the commercials like may show side effects that resemble shingles. Like what?
So what's the point? Yeah, yeah,
You
I
take this
know.
medication that might make you feel like you have the issue that you're taking the medication for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so lots of work that you've put in terms of overall holistic healing with your autoimmune issue that you've kind of put yourself into remission through your own changes in diet, lifestyle. uh, breath work being a huge one, and we talked about calming the nervous system. And I wanted to, I know another big shift you made was taking out alcohol, and you just celebrated a year.
Yes, I did.
Right?
So
Yeah.
yeah, I am in remission. I've been in remission for a couple years now, and um, even though I had given up alcohol when I did the elimination diet, and then when some of my gut testing was coming back that certain things were happening, I gave it up again, and I would give it up for months, but I still
Yeah.
like wanted that drink. Like I still was like counting down the days till I could drink, like till my next gut test comes back good and then I can drink again. Like, and
And
it's
then I
so
came to the
silly because I
grocery
was
store
like, yeah. And it's like, obviously it was no longer aligned with my health goals. And I was becoming a health coach, which it was no longer aligned with like, just running a business, being an entrepreneur is hard enough. Like, so yeah, it just was no longer aligned. And I decided to, I don't know, like give it up January 1st I of last year or the year before. I said like, yeah, I'm going to just give it up. Like I'm just I don't know, like I don't really crave it anymore. Like I'm going to just give it up and see what happens. And I didn't know, that I would at first in my head I was like, yeah, I'll just go for like 6 months. Or at first in my head it was still going to be one of those like I'll just give it up for a while and then maybe go out a couple nights and then maybe give it up again. Like, but as I was doing it, I also was addressing another aspect that I really needed to address with my health, which was not only daily stress management, but it was uh, processing emotions that were trapped inside from when I wasn't doing the stress management and I wasn't processing emotions and just past traumas and stuff. So as I was really dealing with all that stuff, as I removed alcohol kind of at the same time, man, it was super hard, but it really made it. I realize now that the reason I was drinking was to numb things. It was to numb the shame and the guilt and the things, the anger, like the things I had inside of me. Like when I really got down to it, like that was actually why. When if you would have asked me like a couple years ago why I drank, I would have just said like, I don't know, it's fun and it like makes me less awkward in social situations and like, like I would have gave you a very surface level answer. But I realized when I started doing the emotional work, like I didn't crave alcohol anymore. Like it was just
Right.
not something I even wanted. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, here I
It's
am, still
so,
sober.
yay, girl. It's so cool how that happens because, and you had said earlier when you stopped drinking, you were always kind of like looking to when you were going to drink again. And I definitely did that too, where I was becoming aware of the drinking being an issue. And I was also becoming aware that I was interested in health and, wellness and holistic health. And like you said, recognizing it's not really in alignment with health coaching or entrepreneurship. But it took me to like a few times of not drinking and then going right back to toxic drinking patterns to fully give it up permanently. And even then, I did the same thing you did, which was to like go into it as a temporary thing, at least in my mind, even though it didn't end up being that way. But what you said too, I think is so important to point out is it wasn't until you actually did the emotional work of understanding why you drank dysfunctionally in the first place, why you were self-medicating, and really had the courage to explore those emotions and work through them, that the desire to drink was no longer there. Because I think a lot of people do dry months and just white knuckle it and just kind of force their way through like a few weeks of being alcohol free, but they don't do any of the deeper work around self-awareness and emotional regulation and looking at like what emotions am I drinking to escape. And so you just return to the same drinking patterns and you still want to drink because you're not resolving the emotions that are making you want to drink in the first place. And so that is really powerful to me because I know super uncomfortable sitting through emotions in the beginning.
Oh yeah. Super uncomfortable.
Like total hermit phase, like just crying out. And
Oh
I
yeah.
did like I don't even want to go out, when I remember being in that phase where it was like I didn't have FOMO. I knew I didn't want to drink, I didn't want to go out. But then at the same time, I was just like, ah. I remember one day in particular, I was supposed to go out with friends and I was just like, I don't even like what's the point? Like everyone just is just sitting there drinking and I just like sat home and cried. And
Yeah.
I think like that's just kind of what I needed to do for a little while, to process like so many of the pent up emotions I had that I was just constantly distracting myself from with alcohol.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's certainly not comfortable. You start to face those demons, those shadows, those negative emotions. But yeah, I mean, it was in a way too, it was like a form of self-sabotage. Like you know, in a way, like I realized that I guess I didn't think I was worth it to like have this beautiful, amazing life, like my self
Yeah.
worth was low. And like I had those ugly emotions deep down inside of me that were just stored in there, like festering. And drinking in a way was like a way to self sabotage. And that's definitely been a pattern of my past, like self sabotaging things. So yeah, just starting to face those emotions and becoming aware that I was actually doing that and that was a pattern with alcohol. It took me a while to come to that conclusion, that realization. But once I did, I mean, it's been a game changer. Like I said, I haven't craved alcohol. I want nothing to do with it. I'm totally fine without it. I can be around other people drinking. Doesn't bother me at all. Like I
Yeah.
don't even look at it being like, oh, that looks fun. Like, I wish I could do that. Like, not at all, which I never thought I would ever get to that place in my life ever. So it's
Yeah. I,
possible. If
it
I can
is.
get there, it's possible.
Yeah, seriously, if both of us can get there and we're here talking about breath work, then you can do whoever
Yeah.
needs to hear it. Yeah, another thing you said too was the idea of worthiness and self-sabotage. And I've read a lot and just kind of absorbed from the world either, I don't
Yeah.
know, but yeah, just the idea that a lot of people who are highly sensitive and I've seen this in myself and other people, or kind of deeply spiritual or looking for deeper meaning in life sometimes tend more towards like an addictive personality because it's like you're looking for that like spiritual meaningful like level of consciousness. You're just doing it in a way that's not healthy instead of a way
Hmm.
that is. Um, and I feel too sometimes when you start to realize you have a calling or you kind of want more, it's a little bit daunting to step into that. And for me, I definitely procrastinated it for a long time with drinking to almost procrastinate like taking responsibility for creating the life I really knew I deserved. I think we know deep down it's going to be a lot of work to really build our highest potential life. And so sometimes escaping through alcohol is a way to avoid doing it, even
Hmm.
though it just makes us so much more miserable. We're like momentarily escaping the responsibility of creating the life we deep down think we want or know we want. But I for
Yeah.
sure did that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I definitely, I always felt unfulfilled with my jobs. And I was managing restaurants for a while, just bartending and serving as well, and managing vacation rental company. I was running the entire business, but and I was making great money doing that. But I was, helping somebody else with their dream. It had nothing to do with my goals and my passion. And it wasn't fulfilling for me. And I always knew I wanted to help people, but I always thought that would be too hard. I always was
Yeah.
like, how could I do that? Like, it would be so hard to do that. And, you know, when I started getting into the coaching world, like that was still very much alive. Like I still was like, how am I ever gonna like actually help people? Like and you
Oh
have
my
that
God.
imposter syndrome, and yeah, it was hard, and that would be really stressful. And that when I would start to feel stressed, I'd go grab a drink,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
it's hard to have faith in your vision when you don't know how to get there. You just know
Mhm.
that you want something more for yourself, but you just don't know what the roadmap is. And sometimes it's actually not taking steps towards the goal. It's actually removing those barriers that are holding you back
Mhm.
first, right? Like with
Yeah.
alcohols, like, well, obviously you don't fucking know how to get there when you're getting blackout drunk, 4 times a week. Like start with eliminating the blackout drinking, and start with eliminating the distractions from your own inner voice. Start by like sitting with yourself and getting quiet and having the courage to sit with your emotions instead of thinking like, what do I have to do to get to my goal? Like, and I see that a lot, and it ties right back into what you were saying about calming your nervous system first before you make all these changes. It's like it's kind of like you're trying to rush to a destination without a map of how to get there. And you're just like running around like a chicken with your head cut off. And I feel like a lot of us do that when it comes to pursuing our goals and the life we think we want, is we like overestimate like the doing and forget about like the being part. And sometimes that
Mhm.
being has to happen without self-medicating and without escaping. And so I know for me it was like when I finally did stop drinking, I was like, I know that I meant for to do something more than this. Like I have a desire to create like a more fulfilling life, and alcohol is not helping me get there. So let me start there and then see what happens. And then it's like the next step becomes clear and the next step becomes clear, but you can't like skip ahead. You can't like
Right.
get the gratification without taking out any of the things you're using to kind of escape or distract yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and even something that, I wasn't necessarily expecting to come from quitting drinking is my confidence. Like I was also using alcohol to, like if I was going into a situation that was uncomfortable, that was going to give me anxiety, I would have a drink first, like
Yeah.
if you would have asked me to do this podcast a couple years ago, I probably would have had a drink first. Like, so it's yeah, you gotta be able to just, yeah, like you said, be present and be present with yourself,
Mhm.
sober, like just face the shit and just like
Yeah.
have the awareness come in, because the awareness is never going to come to you that you're doing these things or that you're using alcohol for these things. Like I never realized how much it hurt my confidence levels to just always have that as a crutch, that when I did start doing things that were uncomfortable, like man, when I first got sober, like I remember going to my first party that I went to sober where I didn't know anybody, and I was like sweating. I was so nervous. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and now it's like I don't really think about it. Like my confidence is just so much higher, and I could go anywhere and like talk to a stranger and be fine. So,
Yeah, and it's kind of fun and
yeah.
exciting too when you get to have that authentic connection with people as your genuine self and know that you're not hiding behind anything. And I used to do that too, where I would even just like random times where I shouldn't have even been drinking, and I'm like out talking to people and you're like pretending you're not drunk or something, or like pretending you're not high. And it's like it's so liberating to just be like, yep, this is who I am. I have no secrets. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
hiding. The fact that I had like 5 drinks before I came to this event or whatever. And
Yeah.
so it's just definitely liberating for sure. And it gives you that sense of true confidence as opposed to false confidence that ends up leaving you more insecure
Right.
later with more
Exactly.
anxiety later. And it's just, yeah, it's definitely like ultra uncomfortable at first and like awkward. Especially, I know for me, I always identified as very like extroverted. And so for me, it was like really weird to be feeling not extroverted at all socially. And I think that returned slowly, like my more playful, extroverted side has returned like once I got more comfortable. But there's a while in there where I was like, who am I? Is
Yeah.
my personality gone?
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the challenges, or at least was for me when I first quit drinking, was, when somebody had asked me, like, I think I joined a Facebook group or something, and like they introduced like the new members and like asked, like, so what do you like to do for fun? And I literally could not think of anything because the only thing that was coming to my mind was like drinking with friends.
You're like
So I,
fireball.
I, I literally, yeah, like I literally could not think of any other thing I like to do. And I literally, in that moment, I was like, holy shit. Like I messaged one of my friends who has been sober for a long time. We were binge drinkers together, and she's actually been sober for years and years now. And I messaged her and I was like, I just realized I have no idea who I am. Like, and I don't even have any hobbies. Like, I don't even know what I like to do. Like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
sure, I was like into wellness stuff, but like, I really just, I didn't know. And that it hit me in that moment. I was like, oh my God, like I actually have to figure this out. Like, I actually have to figure out who I am and what I like to do outside, like beside that, past that version of me that was just would go out and drink when they were bored, like that was just the first thing that I would do is call up some friends and we'd go to a bar.
Right. I know.
So yeah.
And it's hard because a lot of the relationships you've built are based on alcohol. And when you stop drinking, those friends usually aren't the ones that are like, woohoo, good for you. And so when you need support the most, you've kind of constructed a reality that's least likely to provide it. And the other
Hmm.
thing, too, I think is really helpful for people to know who are realizing like what the hell do I do without alcohol? I have zero hobbies outside of like drinking mimosas during the day or drinking cocktails with my friends at night. And so drinking alcohol on a regular basis affects dopamine levels obviously and our sense of experiencing pleasure. And so a lot of times after we stop drinking, it can take a while for us to experience pleasure just on day-to-day activities. So it's like we kind of go into like a little bit of a dark place or like is life ever going to be fun without alcohol? Like this is boring. What am I going to do? But you have to realize your neurotransmitters are like balancing out. Like you gave
Hmm.
it alcohol every time it needed a dopamine hit before, and now you're not doing that. And actually, your experience of normal joy is lower than normal when you first stop drinking. And it takes a while to come back. And now I feel happy like every day. Just like petting my
Yeah.
dog. You
Yeah.
experience joy like all the time, but at first I think people should always know like it takes a while to start just experiencing like contentment and joy through your day to day when you stop drinking.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, even when I wasn't drinking, before years before that, I was suppressing emotions all the time too. And that all comes into play there as well. Like if you're suppressing all the bad emotions that are coming up and just shoving them down so you can like get through your workday and like power on and like, like
Yeah.
get on with life. And there's all this, kind of this thing with people just say like, yeah, just keep moving forward. But it's like, no, actually sometimes you have to just sit in it and be with it. And so, like that, when you're suppressing all those negative emotions, you don't realize that you're also suppressing the good ones. Like
Mhm.
you're really kind of numbing everything. So the less of the negative emotions you're feeling, you're also not feeling like the happiness and the joy and all that stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I think Brene Brown has a quote about that. That's like you can't suppress the light without suppress or the darkness without suppressing the light. And it's like
yeah,
talking about addiction and just how, like we try to escape negative emotions, but really like our experience of negative emotions and being able to move through them is what allows us to process them. It's also what allows us to experience joy and appreciate joy without negative emotions and lows. I mean, it would be really hard to experience the highs. So when you want to escape the lows, you have to just remember that you're robbing yourself of authentically experiencing the highs of life too, the natural highs of life.
yeah, yeah.
So, okay, well, let's see here. I have a couple more questions and then we'll
Okay,
wrap it up because we're getting to that hour mark that I like to stick beneath.
okay.
Um, okay, we talked a lot about this, but I guess, and how your life has shifted since eliminating alcohol. But I always like to know, what were some of the biggest challenges and what were some of the biggest benefits that you saw from?
Sorry. Well, I knew this
You're
would
like,
happen.
shut up.
I know it's like 5 o'clock. Um, hey, shh, shh. Well, somebody's also knocking on my door. Never fails. Uh,
They're like, "Sorry, do you have a delivery?"
I don't even know.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we'll just write it out.
I literally have a sign that says, "Don't knock on the door, just leave the packages here."
You're like, God
I
damn
literally have a sign that says that, but people
it.
still do it. And yeah, one of my dogs is blind and she just keeps barking and doesn't even know what she's
I
barking
love
at.
She
So
always barks during our recordings, which is just amazing.
yeah,
I love her for
yeah.
that. She's like, fuck you and your podcast, mom.
I know. Any event you're doing online, who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
She's like,
yeah,
lives, I don't care any. But yeah,
yeah.
so tell me the benefits and challenges of eliminating it.
Yeah. So, like
That
I was
stands.
saying before, definitely the challenges were like just finding myself, figuring out who I was without the drinking, and gaining that confidence as well. So I wasn't like so nervous every time I like had to speak in front of people or went to an event or,
Mhm.
finding that confidence again and just that really just I just had to keep going into those uncomfortable situations and just flex that
Yeah.
muscle, I guess, to strengthen it. But um, yeah, I would say those were kind of the biggest challenges. Um, and yeah, just processing the emotions that came along with it, which transformational breath work, that's kind of how I got into that because um, I felt like when I was first quit drinking and I was dealing with the emotions, like sometimes I would cry for like 30 seconds. It would just stop and I would be like, okay, I know there's still more in there, like, and I'm still like sad, but it was like I would be like trying to like squeeze the tears out, like you could like just feel that you like really needed a good cry, but it just like wasn't happening. Like I had been suppressing them for so many years, and there was like so much trauma down in there that I just had never dealt with. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, like my dad died when I was 15. I just dealt with that shit like 2 years ago. Like I just processed his death like at age
Yeah.
38.
That's a
Um,
really hard age to deal
yeah.
with too.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
I immediately turned to drugs and alcohol. Like, I immediately, like, I almost died when I was 15 drinking, like, while he was sick before he even passed away, because I just didn't know how to deal with it.
yeah,
So yeah, I realized that, well, shit, here goes. Like, I'm about to really dive in here. And,
yeah.
um, you
You're
know,
like,
I,
hey, California.
yeah.
Um,
So, yeah, I mean, it was challenging, but also really beautiful. And like I added in the transformational breath work and it kind of like expedited that process a little bit and helped me really release the things that I felt like were really trapped in there that were just like really stubborn and not wanting to come up, even though I knew they were there. Um, yeah. So,
yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like that's the challenge and the benefit, right? Is
yeah, they're really all challenges, but also all benefits. Like
yeah,
all the uncomfortableness I went through, but I regained my confidence and, all of the processing the emotions, like so much beautiful stuff came out of that. Like was able to release so many limiting beliefs and just the shame and the guilt that I felt and able to obviously help my self-worth. And yeah, it's all just been such a beautiful journey, even though all those things were so hard. Like so much beauty came out the other side of it. So
yeah. Yeah, everything worth having is worth fighting for, as they say. And it's so true. And I think it ties back to what you were saying earlier, where people are like, oh, aren't you just gonna like have some fun? It's like, hey, my version of fun has changed, honey. My version of fun is not blacking out, and talking about random shit. Now it's like actually feeling fulfilled and happy with who I am. So it might look a little different.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so that's so cool. And I'm so proud of you and all your hard work with,
Thank
working on your
you.
health, working on your sobriety. And I'm so happy that we've connected in our work and the Awakened Living community. Shout out.
Yes,
It's once a
yes.
month and it's for sober and sober curious souls. So we do it on a monthly basis and it's just $10 to join, but it's just kind of a great a way to come, and we do different themes every month. So this upcoming theme, which will be way long past by the time this airs, but just as an example, is exploration of how we can develop the divine feminine and characteristics of the divine feminine in sobriety. So things like sisterhood, example here, things like our intuition, things like slowing down to speed up, and self-care and self-compassion and self-love and nurturing ourselves in our sober curious path. So that's a topic. And then Leanne always leads us with breath work at the beginning, which is really nice way to start it. And then there's usually some questions or activities and discussion, and then we often open it for Q&A at the end, and it's just nice for people to connect. But that said, I also wanted to leave it to you to share where people can find you, and if they want to know more about your offerings or what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, come find us at the Awaken Living community every month. It's so much fun, and my heart is always so open after. Yeah, if you're sober curious, like just it's like the best support group ever, I feel like. So come find me there. And other than that, I am very sporadic with my social media, but I do have social media. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. And I also just got a TikTok. I only have 2 posts up, but it's there.
It's
Still don't know how to
alive.
use it, but it's there. So I would say if you have Instagram or Facebook, you can find me there. At the link in my bio, you can go to my website and you can see the services I offer. I really focus on transformational breath work, and I do have some clients that we do other types of more gentle breath work. So I do work with people one-on-one, and then I also do like local group events in Charleston as well. And I'm working on some courses, which I'm really excited about, that I really am going to buckle down here and get them done. So,
Yeah, we
yeah.
had that pep talk pre-podcast, like, this is what we need to do this month. I'm like, I need to give birth. And you're like, I need to birth my course.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the
Awesome.
technology parts of it are not the most fun for me,
Ugh,
but once I get over that hump, it's coming for you. The courses are
yeah.
coming for you.
Like, become an entrepreneur, they say.
Yeah, you'll love it, they say.
You'll love it. Make sure you get sober first. Um, but yeah, so thanks for coming on. So fun. I always love chatting with you. And as always, like, subscribe and share if this episode resonates, and we'll see you next time.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you so much for having me.
Yay, girl.